Good morning, everyone. It is truly a joy to be back with all of you. As many of you know, some of you don't, so I'd just like to say a couple words about it because, as is true with all big experiences, where I've been for the last couple of months will definitely find its way into this sermon. Otherwise, I would have gone through a lot for naught. But almost 8 weeks ago now, I had a shoulder surgery, which I was told by literally everyone who heard I was having a shoulder surgery, including the orthopedist who was doing it, that it would be a very difficult experience to go through. It did give me pause when the orthopedist told me that because, forgive me if there's any orthopedists out there listening, but they are real construction guys, and they get their hammers and their nails and their saws, and then they tell you, hey, you're going to feel great as soon as this is over. But I've been there, and that was not always the case. So when he said to me, this is going to be hard, I listened. But I thought, everybody who's telling me it's hard has been through it. And if they've been through it and they look as good as they do, of course, I'm going to be able to do that too, which, as you can see, was the truth. But about 2 weeks into that recovery, which was a challenge, I got very sick, and it took me a long time to know I was sick. Most of you know I'm a physician, and with the help of some of my very best friends who are physicians, I was misdiagnosing myself and treating myself very aggressively in ways that were aggravating the actual illness that I had. So I'm going to spare you all of the details except to say I wound up visiting the emergency room for a very long time from the wrong side, not being the doctor, but in fact being the patient, and was diagnosed with a medical condition called diverticulitis. So as you can see, I'm perfectly okay now, but there were about 3 weeks where I was not perfectly okay. I was actually quite sick, and it was not feeling like fun to do that. There's a lot of lessons that came through that I imagine I will allude to today, but let me just say to you that one of the things that happened to me during that time, the night I came home from the emergency room, Barry, my partner, kept saying to me over and over what a huge responsibility he had really throughout all of this. They put you through these major surgeries, and 4 hours later you're home, and who's ever there better be really centered and calm. He kept saying to me, how do you feel, honey? How do you feel? And I kept saying, I really feel sick. And then he'd ask me again, and I'd say, I really feel sick. And then he would say to me, where are you sick? How are you sick? And I just said to him, all over. I just feel sick all over, which is really what I was feeling at the time. So 2 important things right away came to me about that. Never once did I feel, and I was aware of this even in this, I would call it an altered state, that anything that was happening to me was outside of the karmic plan for me. And every day I would make it down to my altar, at least once, often twice, and I would look at Master and I would say, I know nothing's happening right now that is not mine. And it was so relieving to know that and to honor that. It didn't necessarily make it easy, which was the second thing that came to me. And that was, if we try and say in all of these experiences in life, this is nothing, I'm fine, I'm not feeling anything, I saw with incredible clarity that we lose the value of the opportunity that's coming to us karmically, that somehow we have to see it, and we even need to be able to say ouch at times wow, this is hard, this hurts, but we don't grab onto it, we observe that, we don't necessarily feel that that's a bad thing. There's no attachment to it one way or the other. I was not thinking all of this at the time, but I was observing it. And I thought, if all of the great souls who were coming to help me in every way they were coming, through prayer, through beautiful cards, through beautiful emails, coming and sitting in my altar when I could not, and chanting and meditating for me when I could not, and bringing soups and foods and just all of the ways people showed up, that if I would sit there and say, hey, nothing's wrong, I'm fine, it was such a denial of the extraordinary nature of this path and all that can come to us and our connectedness and why we live and serve in spiritual community and how much easier our burdens, whatever they are, our karma, the karma is to take and allow it to flow when we realize we're all doing it together. That we see God in each other, and that it's God serving God and God helping us through our karma. I will tell you, if nothing else came to me, it was an amazing gift that I got. And because I know many of you, and many of you have gone through this with me, probably all of you did, whether you were conscious or not, I really feel before God and gurus and all of you such extraordinary gratitude for what's happened, and that 8 weeks later, here I am, feeling together physically, though a little minus my right arm for now, but evolved, larger, expanded. This reading today is such a beautiful reading. I could be tempted to say more than many readings. It is so much the essence of our path. Abide in God, and if ye abide in God, then you can bear fruit, which, as Swamiji tells us, what is the bearing of fruit is the really receiving God's vibration and becoming much more consciously aware that we are one with God, that we are one with all that is, that we are sustained by that knowing, and that through that, which is called abiding in God, that we come to this experience of joy, which is our destiny. And it feels to me, though this would be true for anybody consciously on any spiritual path, what Master did for us is he came, Master being Yogananda, who then Swami Kriyananda lived with for the last 3.5 years of his life, and brought us, all of us, everything that is Ananda, all that we know now, all that we're learning now, all that everything. And we know that, every bit of music, so much wisdom. But Master made it very clear to us, this joy is your destiny. This experience of knowing that you are one with God. He didn't say, worship God, bow before him, and worship him as if he is other than you. He didn't say, gather all of the knowledge that you can, because God came to bring you that intellectual knowledge, that knowing, and then bow before it. He came and he said, everything God is, you are too. He said, really, the first thing we teach in meditation, this mantra, Hang Sa, I am that. I am all that God is. Just like Jesus said to us, everything I am, you are too. Yogananda came to show us what it meant to abide in God. He lived that example, and then Swami Kriyananda went to him, and as the reading said, Master taught mostly by attunement. He said many times, he said very clearly, what abiding in God is about a spiritual experience. It's not about a fund of knowledge that we acquire. In fact, one of the other lessons that I came to learn, and I know it to be true, is that to whatever degree we stay in our mind, to whatever degree we cling to the intellectual knowledge, to the trying too hard to sort out our problems by this acquired intellectual wisdom, it is precisely an antidote to the intuition that abiding in God means. Swami Kriyananda himself said, God and the mortal ego cannot walk side by side on this spiritual path. He said the path to enlightenment is too narrow. In his words, God and the mortal ego cannot walk side by side. What does that mean? It means everything we're doing in this life, everything that happens to us, everything that comes to us becomes an extraordinary opportunity, if we see it that way, to move closer and closer to the realization of I am that. So why don't we all do it? Why aren't we all doing it? And it's not easy. Why is it not easy? We have to get to that place in our lives. We have to be brought to our knees. We have to be around people, around teachings, inspired by a song where we get to the point where we say to our egos, I'm done. I am done with you. I am done suffering, trying to let you work out this life for me. I am done with feeling how contracted that life is, how limited, how no matter how many times I have tried to sort out my own problems, and we all know there's an infinite number of them, literally, as long as we are trying to get there through our minds, as long as we're trying to work it out, they just keep coming. And they will keep coming. And the day we say, enough, I am going to do this in some other way, the day our ego gets it, that's when we can move on. There's that wonderful story that Swami Kriyananda has told on himself, where he said he was sitting and meditating and wrestling with aspects of his own ego, many things that he shared with us, some of the ways that he was intellectual, some of the ways that he was trying to force himself mentally to meditate longer, and he got to that place where he just felt like he had it, and he was alone in his room meditating, and all of a sudden he screamed, I'm going to scream, get out, just like that, with all the force and all the power that he has, a lot of power for those of us who knew him. And he said instantly, he felt something leave. He felt an ease come to him. He reached that moment in his own soul's evolution where he meant it. It's not a passive thing that happens to us. The ego is not going to go anywhere on its own. So all of these teachings are right there. But if we don't make this extraordinary effort, it will not happen. You know, the next image, the image that Jesus gives to us of the vine and the branches, and how the vine will sustain those branches. And the way he likens that to the way that God will sustain every one of us. All we need to do is open to that divine flow. The vine doesn't want its branches to wither on the vine and die. Excuse me. But boy, do we get stubborn. Just yesterday, I was outside at my home in the community. I've spoken many times here over the years about the devil in these vines that I planted many years ago when I first moved into this house. They grow like crazy, and they are tenacious. If I'm not careful, and if I don't get them off of the building, as soon as they start growing, they hold on to my building like their life depends on it. And you know, about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I finally hired somebody to come in and take them off of the building. But they have all of these feet, and they grab on. This is true. I mean, they're really something. And I was just noticing yesterday, because I've kept up with it now. As soon as I see them, I take it off, or certain places on my fence, because they would hold my door closed. But where they were taken off a year and a half or 2 years ago, stop by my house, 401. Those dead branches are still clinging to the building. They're still holding on. And I looked at that yesterday and I thought, even after they have withered and died, they still hold on. Now, is that not exactly what we do? Think of how many times life comes to us again and again. It doesn't matter what the form is. You know, this year my Social Security number got usurped by many people who were then trying desperately to go to the IRS and the state government and other places. It's a pretty big thing. You know, many things have happened to me in this year. And, you know, your instinct is to want to fight it out, solve the problem, figure out the way to take care of it. And then one day I said to myself, there is nothing you, Shanti, can do to prevent any of those people who want it from getting your Social Security number. There is nothing you can do. I'm not saying there's nothing some of you might not be able to do, but me, to keep everything I have safe. And each thing that came to me, up to and including this surgery and my diverticulitis, to just say to myself over and over, Shanti, you do not have it in you to fight these battles. You must remember time after time after time to say, come on, Divine Mother, it's you and me. Show me what to do. You show me what to do. Don't let me waste another day thinking that I know something you don't know. You know, in the expanded version of this reading, Swamiji tells the story of Brother Bernard. Anybody who knows the story of Ananda and of Swami Kriyananda knows this story, because Bernard was a great soul, and he was there when Swami Kriyananda walked into Mount Washington to meet Yogananda. And Bernard played a very important role in Swami's life and in many, many people's life. He was a highly evolved, beloved brother and disciple. But he had a lot of physical ailments. He had they called it a double curvature of the spine. It can be a very painful condition. He had one lung. In many ways, he was physically disabled. Master always had him out doing really hard work. He was digging and planting, and you know the stories that they made swimming pools together, with the guru watching to make it extra hard to see, can you remember you're serving God and not just digging a hole. But Bernard suddenly started thinking that he knew things that Master didn't know. He actually moved into a bit of delusion. And he started feeling that he knew more than Master. And he started saying, I shouldn't be out here doing this hard work. Excuse me for 1 minute. And Master said, Swamiji says, as he describes this story, that Master said, as long as he was attuned to me, I could work with him. I could have him transcend these, what he would call limitations, and he never even experienced them. But as soon as he got out of tune, I couldn't help him at all. That was an avatar saying, if we don't do what we need to do to stay attuned to the divine flow, even though the vine wants to keep its the furthest little branches alive and well and thriving, and God has his energy in, eye on, if you will, third eye on every one of us. But if we don't open to it, if we don't more than open to it, but invite it in, demand that it come in, no matter how God holds us, he cannot help us. That's what Master said to Swamiji. One of the other things that I learned when I was sick, I'm saying that past tense, that's probably quite arrogant of me, but one of the things that I saw again was just how hard it is, or let me put it this way, how easy it would be to slide into a darker place, to just let yourself start feeling badly and a little sorry for yourself, and to not hear yourself when you say, all over, I feel sick all over, and then say, is that what you want to be saying? Is that what you want to be affirming? You can notice it. You get a hold of yourself, Shanti. You go right down there and you find Master and say, get in here with me, because the natural tendency is just to slip. Habits are stronger than we are. If we are not adamant and courageous, we will not be able to remember that we have to keep going back there. It is hard to keep our energy up. And I saw that. You know, Sister Gyanamata, who was Master's foremost female disciple. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink of water. I haven't used my voice this much in a long time. Says in one of her beautiful letters, you know, there's a book that's composed of her teachings called God Alone. And as soon as I read this reading yesterday, I said to myself, all you need to do is just sit down and for the next couple of hours, read God Alone. One big part of it is Sister Gyanamata's letters to all of the other, to many disciples, to a lot of the other nuns. Master gave that to her because he saw her perfect attunement with his wisdom, with his light. And in one of these letters, she's writing, listen to me, I have seen this again and again. She says, you can have the same environment. I've seen the same exact situation. Many devotees going through exactly what looks like from the outside the same thing. She said, when the mind wants to be dark, even in the midst of peace, it will find darkness. When it wants to worry, it will find things to worry about. When it wants to be negative, everything looks negative, no matter how much peace is out there. And when a mind is resting in peace, in the midst of the greatest warfare being waged against it, it remains in peace. As Master said, every situation in life is neutral. What matters not is the situation, but what is our attitude towards it? And our attitude towards it means, how attuned are we to the divine? How much do we see it as an opportunity, not as an obstacle? How much can we remember the extraordinary truth that we were brought onto this path, everybody in this church, for a reason, this path that says, everything I am, you are too. Yesterday after our family service, one of the fathers came up to me and he said to me, so he's a husband and a father, and he has 2 little girls who he brings to the family service, who are just, the whole family's charming. And he said to me, you know, Shanti, he said, I started a startup 3.5 years ago. I live in Silicon Valley. I have 2 children that we're raising. They're little. He said, life could be so hard for me, as it is for so many people around me. He said, I travel all the time to Europe, to Asia. He said, but I picked up the autobiography 3.5 years ago. And he said, I never let a morning go by that I don't meditate. I never let a morning go by. No matter what part of the world I'm in, that's what I do for the first 20 minutes every day. He said, I love my life. I go to work, he said, it was like listening to Rajasi, Master's main male disciple, in terms of the words. He said, I go in a little later, I leave a little earlier, I get things done in half the time. He said, I'm not doing that. He said that every morning I start the day by inviting God to work through me. It was so sweet listening to him. It takes enormous courage to do what we are setting out to do. It is not easy. And Sister Gyanamata says over and over, nobody can do this for you. Nobody. If you don't want to work on these, what she calls her main spiritual principles of self-control. Sorry, let me see if I only read them over and over yesterday, but isn't it like that? She puts out self-control, effort, fortitude, and calmness. Her 4 spiritual principles. She said, if you don't get that you need to be working on that, nobody's going to be able to talk you into it. And nobody in the world can do it for you. If you do nothing else, you sit down, Sister Gyanamata, and you say these words over to yourself: calmness, self-control, endurance, and fortitude. Calmness, self-control, fortitude, endurance. Because she says that is what it will take. And then she goes on in every letter to show the fruits of that. God doesn't care if we are the smallest little branch, the farthest away. He doesn't see that about us. What he sees is we're a branch. He's the vine. As long as we do what we need to do to stay open, he will water us. He will feed us. He will see to it that we are filled with, informed by, greeting every situation in the world with his love, his wisdom, his light, his open heart. Nothing looks big then. Nothing looks impossible, I should say. With the hand of God, keeping that connection. If ye abide in me, and me in thee, thou shalt bear fruit. What beautiful words and wisdom for us to keep with us and carry with us no matter what, under all circumstances. There is never a mistake in our lives. It simply cannot be. Whatever comes to us is there because it's giving us the next exquisite opportunity to know God. Bless you.